In 2012, the American economy collapsed, leading to skyrocketing unemployment and rampant crime. As the prison system becomes overwhelmed, private corporations take control of correctional facilities, turning them into profit-making enterprises. Terminal Island Penitentiary begins streaming live cage fights between inmates, but when viewers grow bored, the death race is created. This new spectacle pits prisoners against each other in modified cars, racing to the death for a chance at freedom. In the current race, only two drivers remain: Frankenstein, masked and determined, and his fierce rival, Machine Gun Joe. As they approach the finish line, Frankenstein's weapons malfunction, forcing him to improvise. He releases his car's back shield, temporarily disabling Joe, but Joe isn't finished. Despite the tension, Frankenstein crosses the finish line, winning but exploding in the process. Meanwhile, ex-convict Jensen Ames finds himself caught in a desperate situation when the steel mill he works at shuts down, and riot police violently suppress a worker uprising. That night, Jensen returns home only to be framed for the murder of his wife by a masked intruder. He wakes up to police arresting him, and 6 months later, he is sent to Terminal Island Prison. Upon arrival, he is mistreated by guards and thrown into a cell with violent inmates, but he manages to knock them out. Jensen's reputation precedes him, as fellow prisoners like Coach and Lists recognize him as a former race driver whose career was ruined. At breakfast, tensions rise when Pachenko and his friend confront him, spitting on his food and accusing him of being a wife and child killer. The stage is set for Jensen to navigate the brutal dynamics of prison life, with the death race looming on the horizon. Jensen responds to Pachenko's provocation by attacking him, but the fight is quickly broken up by the guards. He is then taken to meet Claire Hennessy, the prison warden, who offers him a deal. Hennessy knows of Jensen's driving skills and wants him to take on the role of Frankenstein, a masked inmate who was a fan favorite in the deadly death race. The real Frankenstein died after his last race, but Hennessy has kept this secret to maintain the show's ratings, which have plummeted since his death. If Jensen agrees to become the new Frankenstein, he only needs to win one more race to earn his freedom, as Frankenstein had already won 4 out of the 5 required races. Though hesitant, Jensen is left with no choice but to accept after Hennessy threatens him with solitary confinement if he refuses or reveals her secret. Jensen is taken to the prison's auto shop where he meets Coach and his crew, the mechanics responsible for maintaining Frankenstein's car. They introduce him to the modified Mustang V8 Fastback that he'll be driving, equipped with various defensive and offensive gadgets that aren't loaded until race day to prevent escape attempts. Jensen learns that the race consists of 3 stages. The first 2 focus on eliminating opponents, while the final stage is all about speed to reach the finish line. Each driver is also paired with a female navigator from the women's prison. As Jensen familiarizes himself with the car and the rules, he begins to prepare for the dangerous race ahead, knowing that winning is his only chance at freedom. Joe is the one driver who doesn't follow the norm of having a female navigator, opting instead for a male teammate because he goes through navigators so quickly it unsettles the audience. As Jensen gets familiar with the key players in the race, Lists introduces him to the most notorious drivers, including 14K, a Triad member and MIT graduate, Hector Grimm, a psychopath who idolizes Hennessy, Slovo Pachenko, leader of the Aryan Brotherhood, and Travis Colt, a disgraced ex-NASCAR driver. Their conversation is cut short when Joe and his team approach to taunt Jensen, warning him that the race is only between him and Joe. While observing a group of inmates returning from work detail, Jensen notices their GPS tracking bracelets, which remind him of the one worn by the man who killed his wife, hinting at a possible connection. On the day of the first race stage, Jensen dons Frankenstein's iconic gear, his suit, mask, and ring, immediately drawing in viewers who had abandoned the show. Coach advises him to maintain Frankenstein's mysterious persona by avoiding interaction with the other drivers, though he's allowed to remove his mask inside the car since it has mirrored windows. Case, who knows Jensen's true identity, reveals she killed a cop for being a bad husband. The race begins, and although the weapons aren't activated until the second lap, the drivers still try to force each other off the track. With Case's guidance, Jensen seizes a shortcut, taking the lead from Joe. When Hennessy activates the weapons and shields, chaos ensues. Grimm kills a minor driver by pushing him into a death trap. causing Joe to fall back by spilling oil, but ultimately loses when 14K shoots him off the track and Joe runs him over. During the race, Jensen manages to activate his weapons, but his machine gun jams, forcing Case to climb onto the car's hood to fix it while dodging enemy fire. Thanks to Jensen's driving skills, she safely returns to her seat. Though Jensen successfully steals a defense manhole from Colt, none of his defensive systems work, leaving the car vulnerable. Thinking quickly, Jensen has Case unhook the napalm and sit on his lap so he can launch her chair, which hits Colt's car, setting it on fire with the help of Case's lighter. With Colt out of the race, Jensen faces Joe again but becomes distracted when Pachenko makes the same hand gesture as the man who killed his wife. Joe takes advantage of this distraction, pushing Jensen back and causing him to come in last, while Pachenko wins the race. Afterward, Coach and his team check Jensen's car and confirm the gadgets should have worked, raising suspicion. Jensen confronts Hennessy, telling her he knows Pachenko killed his wife, and the entire race has been a setup to frame him. Hennessy doesn't confess but shows him a picture of his daughter, warning him to cooperate if he wants to see her again. Defeated, Jensen returns to the yard and chats with Coach, who reveals he was paroled 3 years ago but chose to stay in prison because the world had changed too much. Coach also admits he doesn't believe Jensen killed his wife. Later that evening, while working on his car, Jensen follows Pachenko to his pit and gets captured by his team. Pachenko starts beating Jensen and prepares to smash his head with a heavy tool, indifferent to Hennessy's supposed protection. However, Lists intervenes by stabbing Pachenko with a pen, creating a distraction that allows Jensen to grab a metal shard and stab his captor. Jensen then knocks out both his attacker and a friend before going after Pachenko. After a brutal fight, Pachenko admits that Hennessy ordered him to kill Jensen's wife and that Ulrich facilitated it. Just as Jensen is about to kill Pachenko in revenge, Ulrich and another guard arrive to stop the fight. The next day, before the second race begins, Pachenko tries to provoke Jensen again, but this time, Jensen stays calm and instead uses a tunnel to talk privately with Case. In the tunnel, Jensen confronts Case, suspecting she had something to do with Frank's death due to the malfunctioning car gadgets. Under pressure, Case confesses to sabotaging Frank's rear weapons because Hennessy promised her freedom in exchange, though the intent was never to kill Frank, just to make him lose. Now understanding the truth, Jensen speeds back into the race, ignoring Joe for now and focusing solely on Pachenko. After a failed attempt to push each other off the track, Jensen surprises everyone by driving backward and using his car's front weapons to damage Pachenko's vehicle. He eventually forces Pachenko into a concrete barrier, then gets out of his car to finish him off by snapping his neck in revenge. Meanwhile, Hennessy seizes the chaos to unleash her secret weapon, a heavily armed tanker truck known as Dreadnought. The Dreadnought, an immense and deadly truck, quickly catches up to the drivers, killing 2 minor competitors with ease. Because it's controlled by the warden, the truck has the unique advantage of being allowed inside buildings, letting it take shortcuts to get ahead of the race. The Dreadnought kills 14K's navigator and destroys his car, leaving only Jensen and Joe. Realizing they can't defeat the truck alone, Jensen connects with Joe through their communicators and they agree to work together. They skillfully flank the truck, dodging its attacks and trigger a trap manhole by hitting it with their car's wheels. This sends the Dreadnought crashing, ending the second stage of the race. Only Jensen and Joe remain for the final stage. That evening, Joe approaches Jensen, noting how his voice sounds suspiciously like Frankenstein's, but chooses not to press for answers. Meanwhile, Ulrich and Hennessy plot to kill Jensen, knowing the Frankenstein mask can easily be passed on to another driver. Before the race the next day, Ulrich plants a bomb under Jensen's car, while Hennessy distracts everyone with a speech about the importance of racing. When she mentions someone may win their freedom with a 5th victory, Jensen realizes that the races are always rigged to ensure no one ever reaches the 5th win. This means he won't be allowed to win either. Coach overhears this revelation and later shows Jensen a critical detail in a video of Grimm's death. Inspired by this, Jensen devises a plan and has Lists add a half-gallon reserve tank to his car before asking Joe to collaborate with him once more. While Jensen is changing into Frank's clothes, Hennessy visits him with his release papers and offers a new deal. If he wins, she wants him to remain in prison and continue as Frankenstein, claiming it's where he belongs. She argues that an ex-con like him couldn't provide a good life for his daughter and suggests that staying would be a selfless act of love. Jensen doesn't give her an answer but pockets the release papers. Before the race, Case reveals that Hennessy also approached her, asking her to stop Jensen if he's about to win, but Jensen isn't concerned. Once the race starts, Ulrich manipulates the manholes to benefit Joe, who fires rockets at Jensen. Jensen dodges the missiles, which hit a weakened section of the wall from a previous explosion, creating an escape route for both him and Joe. Furious, Hennessy cuts the broadcast and sends the cops after them. But Coach has already removed the bomb from Jensen's car, neutralizing her plan. Jensen and Joe make it to the bridge, and with cops closing in, Jensen releases his reserve tank, causing an explosion that halts their pursuers. As they cross the bridge, the two split up with helicopters trailing Jensen. With Case's help, who has already been given her release papers by Hennessy, Jensen executes the final part of his plan. He hides in construction cranes while Case, disguised as Frankenstein, drives on. The authorities stop her and, believing she's Jensen, arrest her, allowing Jensen to meet up with Joe. Meanwhile, back at the prison, Hennessy opens a congratulatory gift only to find the bomb Ulrich had planted under Jensen's car. The bomb detonates, killing Hennessy and Ulrich, with Coach having triggered it. 6 months later, Jensen and Joe are living in Mexico, running an auto shop, and Jensen has regained custody of his daughter. Case, now free, visits with a racing car for them to check out.